Hey, horror fans, Pete here from the Lasser Cast, and today we have a very special guest. We have Mr. Brett Nelson, who has adapted the movie Manborg into a novel. This is for Encyclo. I've always worried about saying this publishing company out loud. Encyclopocalypse. Did I get it right?
Encyclopocalypse.
There we go. Perfect. Okay.
Encyclopocalypse. It's fun to say. It's so much fun to say. Especially once you learn how to say it, you can't stop.
Oh,
And it's
yeah.
Encyclopocalypse publication, so it's even more blah, 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 blah in the back half.
Wow. All right. Well, I flub regular words on this channel, so Encyclopocalypse is going to mess me up. You also have another book on there, Lumber and Other Tales, right?
Yes.
It's a collection of short stories.
Yes.
Cool.
Tiny collection of short stories. There's 3. The whole thing's 45 minutes to read, but
nice.
It was the first thing I did for them, and they're very different. I'm proud of that little collection because you've got a Victorian horror tale that is Lumber, and that's followed by a dark fable, and then that's followed by sort of a little psychological thriller in New York. So they're very different stories in there.
That's cool. Yeah, I actually just learned about Encyclopocalypse. Wow, Encyclopocalypse.
About those guys.
When I went to the Ghoulish Book Festival, I ran into Preston Fassell, and he had a book there, and he had published with them, and so that's when I learned about the label. I started following them on Twitter, and then they turned me on to this book, Manborg. I think it's just like so cool that you adapted this movie into a novel.
Yeah, now you've seen the movie, yes?
Yes.
Okay, that's because that's important.
Yeah.
The tale goes like this. We here, let me. On sale now, folks. This is the mass market paperback edition.
Yes.
When I used to collect novelizations when I was a wee lad, that's the only size they were available in. So I'm old enough to be pre-home video.
Oh, wow.
So
okay.
If you wanted to experience the movie again, you either had to go to the Dollar Theater later and see it more, or you had to wait for $2 Tuesday at the theater near my house, or you got the novelization. Every now and then it came out on Viewmaster, which I told somebody else that they didn't believe me. They didn't. You remember Viewmaster, right?
Like yeah.
Yeah. So I dug through my archives, and I actually found my Poseidon Adventure.
Oh my God.
So there is the early home video of Poseidon Adventure, 21 frames. Here is a Dark Shadows Viewmaster. So
nice.
You experience the stultifying terror of Barnabas Collins and the gang in form. And although it doesn't look right, this is a Star Trek episode. This is the Omega Glory. The only thing they didn't have, they used the old AMC models on their in the interiors for the ships, so they can make them 3D. They couldn't use the process shots of the Enterprise from they thought they could do better with the 3 dimensions if they used models and they posed the shots. But all the frames are from the show.
Oh.
Anyway.
You must have been a pretty awesome kid, because I mean, I love Star Trek. I actually love Dark Shadows too, and those are cool things to have.
It wasn't awesome at the time.
Sure. Right. Yeah.
We would be in line at the midnight show to go see Dawn of the Dead at the Brea Mall, and the kids who were waiting to go see Song Remains the Same would often come over and beat us up.
Oh no.
But that's okay. Later on, we went to go see Decline of Western Civilization in our studded gear, and we got to fight back. So it all worked out okay.
Yeah, it's gone full circle. Yeah.
So getting back to Manborg, Mark Miller is the guy who runs Encyclopocalypse, and the piece I was doing for him next involves a fictitious Poverty Row studio and low budget movies they were making in the 60s and the 70s. So it's a construct, but it's not a nonfiction book. It's all fiction. And we had gone together. It's going to sound stupid. We had gone together to go see a Riff Tracks movie. Now, if you're not familiar, this is some of the guys from Mystery Science Theater formed their own group called Riff Tracks. And a few times a year through Fathom Events, they do a live broadcast from the Belcourt Theater. They've got a live audience there with the movie going on the screen, and they simulcast it to theaters all over America. So I've gone to a bunch of them. He'd gone to a bunch of them, and we found out we were both doing this, and we said we should go to the next one together. So we went and saw Amityville 4, The Evil Escapes, torn to pieces by these guys, and I really recommend that version of it. I do not recommend the movie itself.
Sure.
Is
that the one that has like aliens in it?
No, this is the one with the haunted floor lamp.
Oh,
the villain's a lamp. I kid you not.
Oh my God. Okay, that sounds pretty rough.
The short version is, once the Amityville house was clear, they had a garage sale because the family blew out of there. Right? They were just like, screw it, turn the keys, roar it out. Where's the dog? We're gone.
Right.
So this movie picks up with the Catholic, with the diocese going through and making sure the house is clear. And they say, yes, we can no longer feel the presence. It's okay. This poor real estate agent's trying to sell the place, and he's got a garage sale going on out front. And the funny part that they pointed out was the garage sale is happening as the priests are walking through, making it clear. Maybe you want to back that garage sale off a week.
Right. Yeah. Delay it a little bit. Yeah.
the evil got into this floor lamp, and the floor lamp gets purchased and moved out to this house, shipped out to this house in California, where, I shit you not, where Jane Wyatt and Patty Duke put up their fists and fight against the eternal evil that is the table lamp from hell.
Oh my God!
Great movie, good movie to make fun of. So we're walking out of there. We're talking about low budget movies.
Yeah.
And he says, "Have you seen Manborg?" And I said, "No, but now that I've heard the title, I'm surprised we're not watching it right now. Is there anywhere can we go back in the theater and force it to run it?"
Right.
And he said, "Have you seen Psycho Goreman?" And I said, "Yes, I love Psycho Goreman." And he goes,
Right.
And he tells me the tale. So I saw Manborg, and I guess Mark had the rights to do the novelization for years. Years and years and years. Since he first saw it, he called Kostanski and Ascaron 6 and said, "I want to do a novelization of this." But Mark wanted to write it. Mm-hmm. So the guy who ran Encyclopocalypse was going to write this novelization, and he never found the time to do it. So he said, "Why don't you put your low budget movie story on hold and see if you think you can take a crack at this low budget movie story instead."
Right.
So we talked to Steve Kostanski because I had some questions, got the screenplay. I did the first couple of chapters and said, "Does this kind of sound like the movie sounds?" And I got a thumbs up. And the next draft that I handed in was the whole book. So there were no interim steps. They said, "Just go."
Oh, okay.
And handed that off. There were 4 notes, which was delightful. I had more notes than they had. And there it is.
Wow. Okay. So
we actually interviewed Steven Kostanski for this channel, me and Danny. We interviewed him for Psycho Goreman.
He rates 2 interviewers. How well? I know where I stand.
No, Danny actually wanted to make it today because he wanted to talk about Manborg, and
that's a joke. It's fine.
But every so often, it's just me going solo. I usually go solo with the writers because that's
his loss.
I agree.
We're gonna have all kinds of fun.
We talked to Steven about Psycho Goreman, and we didn't even go into Manborg at all. But what was interesting about talking to him was that he said that so much of the stuff he came up on the fly. He just sort of created things while he was making the props for the movie, right? And for Manborg, I know that essentially he shot it in his garage, right? So So when you have a movie that's essentially made from scratch and made in a garage, I feel like that's you could just jump right off of that and just kind of create your own world as far as the story goes. Is that kind of what it was like for you?
Well, it was. I often hear that it was $1,000 Canadian, and they made it in a garage and that kind of stuff. But all movies are made somewhere, and especially green screen movies. You don't really need a lot of space, depending on how far the actors have to walk. That really defines the size of your green screen or any physical props that they have to interact with. I mean, if you've got 50 extras that need to run 50 feet, well, that's a very large stage you're going to need. But if you can I mean, I've seen stuff get shot. I've participated in stuff getting shot on in a 20 by 40 stage. The whole thing start soup to nuts. You know, it just depends on especially now. Like I've done motion capture shoots on a 60 by 40 stage that look like enormous by the time it's all completed. So what they had was it's that old triangle you've probably seen for making things. It says good and fast and cheap. Have you ever seen this chart?
Yes.
You know, and you get to pick two.
Yeah.
They were forced into cheap and good.
Right.
So that meant it wasn't going to be fast. What they had was time. They had tons of talent,
Right.
and creativity, and you've seen the kinds of sculpting and effects that the guys at Astron 6, and now I think they're all working with Masters Effects in Canada, which means they're doing practical effects for Umbrella Academy, and they're doing practical effects for The Boys, and they're doing, you know, there's gore and splatter all over the place. It looks fantastic.
Yes,
if you check Steve's Instagram page right now, spoilers, kids, there's a character grows an extra arm on this season of The Boys, and that's Steve's. That's Steve's gag.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so because they had the time, yes, they shot it in a garage, but they spent 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And what those 2 years gave them was the time to say, okay, so I cut together and composited this scene and we don't have enough coverage. So let's go back in and we'll set up the lights again and get a couple of close-ups for this and that. And maybe we'll do a shot from outside the window too, just to give it some flavor. And then they composited all that together. And then okay, that looks right. This scene where we're walking up the street in the city, this part of the frame looks really empty. So we're going to get some costumes and some monsters together and shoot that. And we'll get a bunch of killboys beating the crap out of guys with billy clubs. And okay, and we'll composite that into the frame over there. Okay, that frame looks busy now. That looks full enough. That's good. So in building the picture up in layers like that over the course of 2 years, that's why it looks like a movie when it's all done.
Right.
It doesn't have that cheap, you know, in the you look at the I recently watched I can't even remember which one it was. I can't remember. Black and white late 50s horror. Could have been Return of the Fly, could have been any in that bunch. But you can tell where they're saving the money because people will walk in a room, like there's the one shot, and everybody walks into the room and they start their dialogue and it goes and it goes and it goes and they sit down.
Right.
And then they've got a couple of singles and the medium and a couple of, but you can just tell they shot the thing like a stage play, knowing they didn't have enough time or money to edit it. So they just got it. They got it all in what we used to call the 2-shot and fries, which is you've got your deuce of the two people talking across the table, and you got that guy single, you got that guy single, you got them walking in, walking out. We're done. Lunch.
Right.
But it doesn't make for a very interesting movie. You know, it doesn't. But Manborg it looks like a flippin' movie.
Yeah.
And if you look at, you know, okay, we don't have much money or time and talent. What's the story we're going to tell? Mm-hmm. Well, Earth goes to war with Hell. It's very late in that process. There's just a couple of holdouts left. At one of the final battles, a grunt gets pulled off the battlefield. Mysterious groups turn him into a cyborg and put him into suspended animation for 10 years so that the Hell rulers can kind of calm down and think that everything's cool. Then a hero has an opportunity to rise. First night he wakes up, the whole world's different now because we've been under Hell's rule for 10 years. He's immediately captured. Yay! Yeah. Could have been the end roll credits.
Right.
He's forced into arena battles. In the gladiator arena of Hell, he meets a gunslinger, a knife expert, and a martial arts master. They become the unlikely kill the demon squad to wrest Earth back away from the forces of Hell.
Yes.
Now, most people would have said, let's get 6 of our friends, put them in a cabin and kill them one by one.
Right.
That would have been most people's out of the gate movie to begin with. But no, we're going to make this huge epic thing and we're not going to hold anything back. And it all worked. For me, it all worked. The fight scenes were well choreographed. Mm-hmm. When number one man is up there striking the poses and doing the flying kicks and all of that, he looks like a badass. He doesn't look like somebody who his friend who kind of knew Taekwondo. You know,
Right.
when Mina's doing all of her anime flash moves with the scroll, with the action stripe backgrounds and stuff, she looks great. When Justice is out there spinning around like some kind of disco traffic cop shooting people with his laser guns, he looks great. They all
Right,
look great. So yeah, with that, they said make that into a book, and I'm like, well, I could probably make that into a book because there's an awful lot beyond the edges of the frame, and that was the key. He shot. You could tell there was a world beyond
Right.
what the frames were showing.
Right.
You know, they showed enough of Meganet City to know there's a lot more going on. Like I said, there's people getting beat up in the background. There's still humans there. In the arena fights, it's not just our stars. There's at least 8 or 9 other people all in the same situation. But that, again, that's more story there.
Right.
There's a lot of assumptions on the tech. There's flying cars. There's guys with hoverboards. There's all kinds of different weaponry. There's different classifications of the people in hell. So there's plenty to draw from in the story. And they were nice enough to give me the screenplay. So I had the screenplay and the movie. And from there, it was just a matter of making sure that there was enough to tell everything. Does that make sense?
Of course. Yeah. That brings up an interesting question though, that I think of, like, you saying that there's so much possibility with what you could write just based on like what's in the periphery of the movie, like what's not stated in the movie. So my question is, because I feel like you could just go and run with that and write like multiple books. You know, you could talk about Count Draculon, and you could talk about the Baron, and really go into depth and like do whole sagas. Like, so was the idea then to just kind of maintain it and make it as close to the screenplay as possible, or was that part of the notes that you got, or was like to like not stray too much from the
No,
source?
because when we first started, my very first conversation with Steve Kostansky was, we've got to start with day one of the Hell War and get through kind of what happened, because in the movie that's a title card.
Right.
We went to war with Hell. Hell won. The end. You know.
Yeah.
It would kind of be a ripoff if you got the novelization if it opened the same way with just the last fight.
Sure.
So I was given leeway to go ahead and figure out how all of that happened. The other guiding thing was something Mark told me early on, which was the title's locked, and the title is Manborg, and the title of the movie is Manborg. So this has to reflect the movie.
Right.
The person who buys this book, if this is the epic background story, everything you ever wanted to know about Count Draculon, that's not the name of the book. The book's about this guy.
Right.
So anytime I felt like I was out on a tangent, I'd say, okay, how far away am I from this guy's story, from Mike Halloran's story? Mike Halloran was a soldier who was on a patrol, and suddenly, much to his surprise, we were at war with Hell. He ends up in a resistance group. He ends up dead. He ends up a robot, and he ends up a hero. That's the story. Yeah. So anything I'm writing has to support that story.
Yeah.
Now, maybe we come back and maybe write another one. I don't know, but it would certainly have a different title and be somebody else's tale.
Yeah. Are you very interested in that? Like writing maybe like a spin-off of some kind?
I don't think not that. I mean, I've got my next giant when I'm up for air again and I'm done with the there's a giant file over here that you can't see of the stuff that I'm doing next. And once that's done, maybe, but it's so tight right now.
Yeah.
It's got a beginning and a middle and an end, and a really good, I think that they built really good solid characters that we spent enough time with, and they won. You know, spoiler. Right. Sorry, folks. The bad guys don't win.
Yeah. Spoilers for this movie that came out in 2011.
Yeah. I mean, the nicest note we got is on the back cover from Steve Kostansky, which is, I couldn't put it down once I start reading it. And this is coming from a guy who spent 3 years buried in this story and was more than happy to never experience it again. That's from Steve Kostansky's foreword.
Yeah.
And I guess people don't get how many times, they say, why don't you ever see your movie in a theater? They'll often ask directors, how come you don't go to the movies to see your movie? And the director's like, I saw it at least 1,500 times when we were editing it.
Right.
The last thing I want to do is go see this again bigger, so I can just, all I will see 40 feet across is the stuff that I couldn't fix, the stuff that they wouldn't let me fix.
Right.
That's all I'm going to see, because it's never done. It's never finished. They just take it away from you.
Right. Well, so when you were writing it, was there a specific character that you really liked the most? Because I actually really like each of the characters in the movie.
They're well drawn. They're very well drawn characters. They're not. It's not like it's a bunch. I'm trying to think of a good example. Okay, The Thing is a great movie. Sure. I love The Thing. Carpenter's.
Yeah.
However, just given what it was, a lot of the guys in that research facility, they're very similar to each other.
Right.
They're very, very close to each other. I think that's just because it was everybody against the creature, and that was really they became very different once they were infected.
Right.
Once they were infected, they were very different from the rest of the guys. But that wasn't the case here. It could have very easily been, when he got in that arena, that it didn't matter that one was using knives, one was using guns, and one was using their fists. They could have all been very similar characters. Oh, yeah. Even though one's a girl, they could all still have been, cut from the same cloth, but they weren't. Right. They really weren't. Justice is kind of a goofball, and Number One Man is just this really overwrought. You're right. And Mina is just, she's so done with all of this. She is just done. Yeah. Stupid ass boys all around, and she's just so done. And so, like you said, making the movie on the fly, a lot of what was in the script is in the movie, which is surprising. And really, I guess if you're going to keep an effects heavy film like this, shooting on green is tough. Not knowing what the background's going to be, or only one person knowing what the background's going to be. And when you have characters, moving in this plane against a background that isn't there yet, it's very tricky. It's tricky to keep track of. I've only done that kind of shooting with puppets, and it's tough. It is tough to keep your head around how it's all going to map together. And you've always got to keep the background and the characters relative to something, because when they're on green and they're moving and you're looking through the camera, you lose track unless you can see their feet. Okay, did the camera get closer to them just then, or did they take a step toward camera? Mm-hmm. Unless you've got your notes or your memory, you don't have it. You don't know if it's the camera, the background's gonna do something as the character gets bigger in the frame. If it's the character moving, the background's not going to do anything as the character gets bigger. So it's just all of that stuff. I can see why a lot of the screenplay ended up in the movie, because you'd go bananas if you just went in there and made up a bunch of stuff. You'd never be able to stitch it back together again.
Right.
But things like the Baron did not have a crush on Mina in the script. Mm-hmm. Jeremy Gillespie, who was the co-writer of the script, played the Baron. He was underneath all that rubber. Right. And he just came up with it so that the Baron would be different than Draculon.
Right.
As it was, the Baron was Draculon light. He was another big, mean, ugly monster. Right. And once they started shooting it, they weren't different enough. So, we'll make him a little bit dorky. We'll give him a little quirk. At the end of the movie, in the script, Draculon goes through this transformation and becomes this, massive, crazy creature that it's like he dies repeatedly, and every time he comes back in a different, kind of like the Thing, he keeps coming back bigger and badder and more horrible. I kind of like the way they did it in the picture better. I think he was clearly bigger and pointier and meaner and uglier and all of that. It's enough. And to end it with him choosing to fight hand to hand. This is a demon that he could have just had the earth open up and swallow this guy.
Right.
He's shown that ability, but instead, no, this is going to be fun.
Right.
Which is what he said in the very beginning, at the end of their very first fight. He said, if you humans weren't so fragile, we could have had a real fight. And he's disappointed that their spines keep snapping and pieces of them keep falling off and they bleed out just when it's getting good. Right. So now Manborg's back with enough, armor and technology that he can have a real fight, and the Baron doesn't back down from it. He's just like, oh, cool, this is going to be awesome now. I'm still going to
Finally.
win.
Right.
Or
Yeah.
Dracula, excuse me, not the Baron. So
Right.
just getting all those arcs together in the story, it was fun. It was just a ball to write because the source material was so batshit to begin with. You know, it was right up my alley. And
Right.
The characters were clear. I knew what to expect. It was easy enough to find their voices, and the way they related to each other. The scenes themselves were very clippy and brief. So even if I had to make something a little longer, it still never got tiring because it was already short to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And so many goodies in there. I love naming things, naming monsters, naming procedures, naming places.
Yeah.
And he had so much little, you know, they in the movie you saw, yeah, he's got a missile in his elbow and he's got a cannon on his arm and he's got a beamy thing in his eye, but they don't name them.
Right.
And you don't know what they're all for. You know, so when I was writing it, I got to call out all the blades in this Swiss Army guy and figure out what each of their uses were. That's a ball. That's great. That's fun.
Yeah.
And naming all of number one man's fight moves was fun. Because I don't know how much comic books you guys read, but back in,
I'm a big comic book guy, so go ahead.
In all the old Iron Fist comics, every frame they had the little name of what the form was, you know.
Right.
And that's what came to mind as I was writing this, because the first time through, I just had him fighting and countering, and I was saying what the moves were, but it didn't feel like martial arts to me. And that's when I remembered, oh wait, if I can name the move, if I say that he did the hare's relentless bite, well, now that's a form, that's a discipline. He's made a decision, you know, and even though it's all made up, it's still more of a kung fu thing if the forms have a name and there's a way you do it and a way you don't do it, and it's a specific counter to a specific thing. Again, it was to differentiate him from Mina's knives and the other guys. The Killborgs are just punching.
Right. So it's interesting you're saying this, because like when I first saw Psycho Goreman, I was like, oh, that'd be so much fun to like explain this stuff and give names to these random things that we just see in imagery. I know that you were saying that the guy that runs Encyclopocalypse wanted to adapt this into a book. Is there any talk about adapting Psycho Goreman into a book?
It's all a matter of rights. I mean, Astron 6 owns Manborg outright, so there was one phone call to make to one group and you're done. I don't know, frankly, who all has Goreman or what you would have to go through. I do know there's an awful lot of logos in front of that movie. And I know there's a lot of logos after that movie, which tells me that's a lot of fingers in the pie.
That's a good point.
That's what it takes to make a movie now. You know, back in 2011, when you got cobbled $1,000 together, you can hang on to all of it. But now you got to get I got $20 from this guy. I got this much from the Kickstarter. I got another 15 grand from that guy. And you know, I think it was still less than $1 million to pull off Goreman, which is a miracle.
Ridiculous.
And it looks great.
Yeah. So you mentioned before that you've worked with puppets, and I was looking through your IMDb, and you know, you have different roles as a director, a producer, associate producer.
I get bored really, really easy.
What's that?
I get bored really, really, really easy.
Oh, okay.
I'm very scattered. I'm very distracted, and I can't hold down a job. So there's all kinds of different things there.
Oh, okay. Well, I'd actually like to be enlightened on this, because when it comes to the role of the producer, I've sometimes interviewed people that have been producers on things, and they're like, oh yeah, I just gave them money, right? I know that there's all varying degrees on what you actually do. So like, what is the job of an associate producer? Like you were that on Farscape, right? The Peacekeeper Wars?
It was an associate visual effects producer, and that was probably my tiniest credit. I think we had all of 12 shots on Peacekeeper Wars, but I was so endeared to the project that I made sure that I got to put a credit up because I was such a fan. I think we spent all of 2 days on one scene. And on that, my job was mainly that of coordinator, which was making sure that when the director walked in, everything was ready to go. The contracts were signed, the things were done. It was all buttoning things. I think the larger producer roles I had were in children's television, like for Sid the Science Kid, or things like that. Producers get things done. That's it. If you need things done, the producer is the one who is completely responsible that it happens on the day and in time. They hire people, they fire people, and sometimes they find the money, sometimes they find the talent, sometimes they wrangle it. You hire different associate or assistant producers to handle various aspects of the performance. So you may have in a visual effects heavy show, you will hire a visual effects producer, and they're just in charge of making sure that the special effects team is going to have what they need after the picture is done to do what they need to do. So you don't have to go backwards again. You have a unit production manager. They're in charge of all the money, making sure the money going back and forth is right. For Sid, that was a very tech-heavy show. It was a show we produced with the Henson Digital. It's a Jim Henson show.
Yeah.
And we were using digital puppetry for the first time in a really big show. So picture, I don't know how much behind the scenes you've seen for Dinosaurs or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, for Turtles, I've seen a lot.
Yeah, so they use those Stick and Waldo controls to do the animatronic heads. And then you've got a guy in a suit who is the turtle himself. So you've got the turtle with an animatronic head. With Sid the Science Kid, we applied those same controls, and instead of moving servos and pulleys in an animatronic head, they were moving texture maps and Maya nodes on a CG head. And then we had a mocap suit performer instead of a rubber suit performer, although some of them were the same performers that would be in the suits. In fact, the girl who was the suit performer for Sid in Sid the Science Kid just did Mandalorian. She was Cooley in the first season, and she was the Frog Lady in the second season. Her name's Misty Rosas, so she still does the practical suit work as well. So cool. We're doing the show in essentially a proprietary game engine. We have virtual cameras that are run live by operators. We have mocap suit performers that are driving the characters' bodies at the same time. Puppeteers are driving their heads and saying their voices. They're in a CG environment that the cameras are moving through. So even though it's a cartoon, even though it's CG at the end of the day, we're shooting it like 3-camera proscenium television. We're doing it all live.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So we don't have to fake outtakes like Pixar. We had actual outtakes. So if you were just looking in, if you were in a truck that just had the monitors that the director looks at, you would see him giving commands to CG characters that were then realizing them in real time.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's cool.
It was, but it was a lot to keep track of. And my part of that production was the live portion, the stage portion. So I was making sure that the suits, the puppeteering rigs, the sound, the camera, the stage itself, feeding all of those people, just making sure that all of that was tied up. And then I had people that worked for me, but for every chunk of the production that, the executive producers are looking at, for the editing and this, that, the other, they need to know that, okay, this thing's complicated. Who's in charge of that? Well, this guy is. Okay, well, this part's really crazy. There's a lot of music and a lot of dance in this, and who's coordinating all that? Well, that's this one. So you have assistant and associate producers that are plugged into chunks of the show. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course. Yes. Yeah. It's interesting because it makes it more like a whole big business, and you guys are like the managers essentially, or like the principals working for like the superintendent. That's interesting. I haven't ever looked at it like that before.
And it's the fight against, because you're like in video game production, you're designing the plane while it's flying, because you always start before you're ready. Yeah. You have to. If everybody waited until they were ready, nothing would ever get made, ever.
Yeah.
Ever. At some point they got to say, and especially with multiple episodes, you can't wait until the last episode is written and locked down before you start producing the first one. It'll never happen.
Right.
So I would always say that the pre-production, all of it is you're drawing a circle around all the tasks, but it's with disappearing ink. So by the time you get to where you started the circle, it's already gone again.
Oh
So,
wow.
but you keep doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it, and eventually the ink sticks. And then you're like, okay, now we can start. Start before it disappears again, because it's going to.
Yeah. Oh my
It's
God.
at least a whole circle. Pull the trigger.
Yeah.
Well, for an animated show, how long does it take to make a single episode?
Well, now, like I'm in the director's chair now over there, and we do a kids show called Word Party on Netflix.
Yeah.
Word Party and Word Party Math we just finished. We can shoot an 11-minute episode of Word Party in a day.
Oh, okay.
Now it takes longer to post it. It's got to get edited. It's got to render. They've got to clean it up, and make it all look pretty. The real-time view we have looks PS3, early PS4.
Okay.
So we can certainly shoot to that.
Yeah.
We can really, really shoot to that. But to keep all of those inputs and all of those nodes that are all running in real time, it's doing so many calculations to add real-time shadows or anything on top of that for the view. It's just we're working with some people to get there, but we're not there yet. It still has to get post-rendered and stuff like that. But it's we can get the whole thing shot in a day now.
Oh wow. Okay.
And it's fun. It's a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
As a director, are you also giving direction to the actors that are doing the voice performances?
It's all the same people. That's the wonder of the system. The puppeteer is doing the voice.
Oh, okay. Okay. Wow.
We get it all. Head, toe, fingers, voice, dance, camera, all of it. All of it in one place.
Okay. Huh.
Yeah. So how long have you been working in this field?
I started with Henson's 20 years ago,
Wow.
I want to say. But it all came out of video games. I mean, I was making video games for Disney in the 90s, and then I switched over to Henson's. And then as the digital animation that was in the video game started to drift into TV, I kind of drifted over with it.
I see. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah. I mean, when I looked at your IMDb, I zeroed in right away on Farscape because I'm just a huge
Many do.
Farscape.
That's
Yeah.
why it's there.
Yeah. And I and also just Jim Henson, just the company just has a place in my heart. I just love what they brought to entertainment in general, and I try to show as much Jim Henson stuff to my kids as possible. And it's just kind of interesting to see the evolution from the live action puppetry to now to like digital stuff that you're talking about too.
And puppets too. I mean, they just, in fact, while I was shooting this last round of Word Party, which was Math Party, there was another group up north shooting the Fraggle Rock reboot that's on Apple TV right now. And it's fantastic. The new Fraggle is terrific. It's really terrific. And that's all puppets.
Nice.
That's all for really puppets.
So then when you were working on the Farscape show, like what were you doing there specifically?
There we were in California. It was a big, like I said, I was with the Creature Shop at that time, and we were picking up bits and pieces. And there were scenes where it was all second unit stuff, really. There was so long ago. The war was going on, and Rigel was getting bad news from back home, and we needed to work out what the other Hynerians looked like, because he was the only one we'd ever seen.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden he gets a call from his cousin or somebody. And in the script, that's easy, but in reality, it's like, well, we can't just, get the other Rigel puppet and put it up there. That's not going to work. So
Right.
It was a lot of the, probably more thinking than it needed to be, to say, if you look at, are Hynerians like humans, where if you get a bunch of them in a room, there's like big ones and little ones and skinny ones and larger ones and all of that? Or are they like birds, where you've got a hummingbird and a duck and an ostrich, but they're all birds?
Right.
Where do Hynerians fall in this hierarchy of species? And how much time do we really have? And I'm just going, well, can't we just like stretch him this way? Like, oh, can't we just smash him, make him tall and skinny, make him the tall and skinny ones, and sort of already invert them. We ended up somewhere in between, but that was most of the work, was just figuring out what other members of the species would be. It would have been easier if it was a completely different species.
Right.
Because then you can have pre-production draw really cool monsters and you pick the coolest one and you make that one. But this one had to fit in a box, and for some reason they really hooked into what it's got to look like.
That is so cool though, man. Yeah. You're the first person I've ever talked to that's worked on Farscape besides
barely.
Besides the actress that's played Johnny. You know.
Oh, why can't
I forget her name too?
Because I just saw her recently too.
Gigi
Edgeworth.
Right. Yes, exactly.
She did that Creature Shop Challenge show at Henson's a few years back. She was a co-host for that.
Oh man, yeah, like that must have been a really good bonding for you talking to Stephen Kostansky, because you have this experience working with Jim Henson's and with puppetry, and then he makes all that stuff for Astron 6 too.
We geeked out some, but mostly over the toys that were in our offices. That was it became this challenge of who can reach out a frame and appear with the coolest object.
That's awesome.
As he's talking to me, he's got all the sculpts from the Gorman mask and all the creatures, because that's what he was working on at the time. So I said, there's no point in me getting any toys out because you trumped me with everything behind you. And he says, oh, that's just work.
Right.
That doesn't count.
Yeah. Man. Real talented dude, yeah. But
it's with my my wife got me a replica of the Ashy Slashy puppet from Ash versus Evil Dead, the one from the Madhouse episodes.
Oh, okay.
I got to put that on my arm, and I actually trumped him a little bit. Nice. Until he said, "Is that the one? Is that screen use?" I'm like, "No." But it sucks the air out of everything.
Yeah.
Look at this thing. My friends just did this. Here, I know we're way off topic, but I got that in a loop crate.
Voltron?
It's an eraser. Actually, it's 5 erasers. It's 5 erasers that combine to form Voltron. And I said, that's the coolest thing ever, and it's the Lions.
Yes.
And I showed it to one friend of mine, and he says, well, where's the sword? And as soon as he said, well, where's the sword? I was like, this thing's a piece of crap. Man.
I thought you were going to pull out a pen and that was the sword or something.
No. The sword. He sucked all the air out of it.
Going off topic and stuff, and speaking of Voltron, did you like that Netflix Voltron show?
Netflix Voltron show. Was it Netflix or was it
Yeah, it was like Legendary Defender or something like that, and
it wasn't my Voltron. I was very young when I saw Voltron. Voltron Cars was the first one I saw.
Oh wow.
It was just different. It was too polished for me.
Oh, okay.
It was too clean.
Yeah.
I like it. I like it with some of the flashing still on, that they didn't get the blade out and clean that up. Like it. I like it still rough.
Yeah. No, I understand. I like the original Voltron when I was a kid. That's from like my time. I'm 39, so like Voltron and like Transformers and G.I. Joe. That's kind of like my era as a kid. Yeah, we're getting. But bringing it back to your writing though, right?
To Manborg on sale now.
There you go. Hey, I don't know if you want to whip out some other books too, but we talked about Lumber a little bit, but then I was also interested because you actually contributed to an anthology that was made based on Ramon songs, right? Or Ramon music.
That was fun. Yes.
Yeah. Now, see, here's the thing. I don't know a lot about the Ramones either. I got to admit, I only know kind of like their typical songs that everyone knows. And so, like, when you're working on this, did you have to pick a specific song to be inspired by?
That was the goal. The McVeigh over at that was a British company called Fahrenheit Press, and Chris McVeigh, the guy who runs that one, he was out with friends, And the conversation came up, what was the first concert you ever went to?
Yeah.
And they kicked it around the table. And all three people he was with all said it was the Ramones at this particular venue. It was when punk went legit in London. It was like this big deal that the Ramones were going to come from America. And you could only fit so many people in the club, but everybody was there. I mean, Joe Strummer was there. And the rumor is they had to pull John Lydon and through the back window because he didn't have a ticket. so Strummer like snuck him in. There's all these rumors about this mythic show about the Ramones, but that was the first show they all ever went to. So They started talking more about the night and how important that music was at the time and how it legitimized the punk movement. And they said, wouldn't it be fun being publishers? We just put out the call and say, pick a song, write a story that somehow relates to the song. Don't have to include the lyrics or anything, but at the end of the story, if you know the song, you should be able to say, yeah, that relates. And we'll pick the 24 best ones and say that's our double album.
That's awesome.
12 songs each. So they put out the call, open call. I wrote a story. I have the longest title, which is Bonzo Goes to Bitburg, My Brain is Hanging Upside Down. Which is a great song.
Oh, that's an actual Ramones song, is that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Well, it was called My Brain is Hanging Upside Down on the original record release because it was a song about a real gaffe that Reagan did. And they called it Bonzo Goes to Bitburg. And they did some of the labels got iffy about it. So they came up with another line from the chorus, which was My Brain is Hanging Upside Down.
Wow. Okay.
So I wrote a piece about what I was doing at the time. There was a little memoir piece.
Oh, okay.
Fictionalized. I'd say most everything in the story happened. It didn't all necessarily happen to me.
Okay.
A lot of it did, but it was an amalgam of my friends and other things, and I compressed them all down to 3 people.
Yeah.
And it got picked. It got
That's
picked
awesome.
from like the hundreds that were in, and it's in there. But every story in there's good. Every story in there's good.
Are they all different genres, or are they all kind of just fiction? Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
There's memoirs, there's crime fiction, there's horror, there's everything, all over the place.
That is cool. I got to check that out because
Like the
I've never
Ramones,
heard anything like that.
Ramones wrote the credit sequence music for Pet Sematary, for God's sake.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah. So you mentioned a stack of like documents right to the right of you.
Yes.
So that's what you're working on right now?
Which? Oh yeah,
Like,
I got a bunch of stuff coming. Right now, it's that fictitious Poverty Row studio piece for Encyclopocalypse is the next thing.
Okay.
I'm in the middle of it right now.
Nice. And so, can you give us a little detail about that too?
I don't know because my contract is like,
I got you.
What the goal is, create this fictitious studio. I could tell it's called World Cinema Group, but it's it could just as easily be Dimension Films or Full Moon or any of those.
Okay.
AIP, you take your pick. It's any of those studios. And some of the movies they made in the 60s and 70s, with the assumption that all of them are lost films. So in addition to the story, which is the story of the movie, here is Drag Strip Zombie Massacre. So here's the tale. Here is a giant flatworm invasion, and here's that story. But after that comes the fun parts. Well, the stories are fun, hopefully, but that's also followed with like IMDb sort of trivia page of different stuff about the movie itself. And I've got some friends that are, making shots of what used to be props or some storyboard pages or things like that, just to back up the fiction that this was an actual film made by actual people.
That is so cool. That is awesome. And when is that supposed to come out?
When I finish it.
Okay, all right.
It's on me. It's on me to get it done. So
okay.
So I would hope And again, even if I get it done, Encyclopocalypse has to like it. That's the next step. And then the next step is they've got to look at everything that's coming out. Like June's a heavy month for them. I think they've got like 8-9 titles coming out this month.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
It's figuring out where it would plug in the grid.
Yeah, I'm really glad that I became aware of them from the Ghoulish Book Festival. And, I've been in contact with Sean Druagar, right? That's his name? Yeah. And so he's just kind of let me know about upcoming titles. He let me know about your book. And it's just been awesome kind of knowing. It's like this whole collection of all different authors that I didn't even realize had works under the same imprint. And so it's just awesome. And I liked reading your book a lot. I was wondering, I don't know if you ever would want to come back on the show, but maybe Danny would be around again too. And we could talk about your next book after it comes out.
Yeah, that'd be fine with me. Absolutely fine with me.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me. And, I guess until then, do you want to, kind of give a plug as to where people can find your stuff and what to look for?
I would just point everybody to, like you, there's so much good stuff at Encyclopocalypse. Not even their new releases are all really great, but they've done such a good job of finding older out of print stuff and bringing it back out again. Especially with their novelizations. Their website, not so much their social media is very active, but if you go to the actual website, the encyclopocalypse.com, and just cruise around through the authors and the products and stuff like that, you'll find, like the Odd Job based on the, Graham Chapman movie from back in the day, and all the stuff Tom Holland's written over the years. And there's some Steve Niles titles on there. And they did an audio book of the Amity, I can't remember, Tales from Amity something or other, but it's a bunch of anecdotes from people who ran the Jaws ride at Universal.
Oh, that's cool.
And it is so, you think like, really? That's kind of niche, but it's so funny.
Yeah.
To hear these people that were involved in this ride's creation and its day-to-day operations, it's like an episode of The Office in a book, only it's a really weird office where we have this electric shark that attacks people instead of paper that we're selling. But there's tons of stuff there, and it's all really good. So I would say, and I'm there too. I mean, if you want to find me, I'm there.
Yes.
But yeah, I would point everybody at Encyclopocalypse.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll leave a link to that in the description below too. Yeah. But yeah, so like I said, thank you so much for talking to me today. And me and Danny would love to have you on, in the future. And, just hopefully people will check out your stuff after this video.
I hope so too.
All right. Well, thanks so much.